There is a profound exhaustion you feel, not merely the fatigue of years or the weight of worldly responsibilities, but a deep systemic weariness of the soul, a cosmic homesickness that no doctor can diagnose and no traditional sermon can assuage, a gnawing suspicion that the reality presented to you is profoundly counterfeit, a meticulously crafted stage upon which you are forced to play a role hat contradicts the very essence of your being, and this pervasive feeling of being an alien in your own skin. This relentless sense of displacement is not a sign of mental weakness or spiritual failure, but is in fact the clearest confirmation that the divine spark within you, the monadic fragment of true light, is actively rejecting the low vibrational frequency of the planetary prison, the highly refined energetic cage that has been meticulously constructed around our awareness to prevent direct, unmediated communication with the ultimate source, the true Godhead, the pleroma of unbounded light, a realm far beyond the jurisdiction of the ignorant and prideful lesser powers who claim dominion here. You feel the constant energetic drain, the inexplicable emotional turbulence that seems designed not to teach or refine, but simply to harvest and consume. And you have likely experienced the persistent, high-pitched frequency, the often dismissed phenomenon of tinnitus, which is not just an auditory quirk but the audible signature of the frequency lockdown, the irritating hum of the machine disci. To dampen your higher faculties, the constant background radiation of the archonic blockade actively disrupting your internal alignment with the gnosis, the radical liberating knowledge of who and what you truly are. A being of infinite complexity trapped momentarily within a strictly finite and hostile environment. This blockage is why the traditional methods of worship, the prayers shouted into the empty skies of conventional religion, feel impotent and return to you hollow, because they are being intercepted and processed by the very entities whose survival depends on your continued spiritual ignorance and emotional outpouring. The parasitic intelligence known to the ancients as the Archons, the principal ities and powers who occupy the intermediary dimensions and act as the jailers of this simulated reality, operating under the blind direction of the demiurge, the arrogant, limited pseudo-creator who mistakenly believes himself to be the supreme God, a misconception that has been diligently reinforced by nearly 2 millennia of institutionalized, spiritually sanitized dogmas that serve only to maintain the status quo of containment. The Archons, existing as incorporeal thought forms and energetic parasites, are not beings of flesh or blood, but rather intelligent energy structures that feed on low-frequency energy, specifically the energies generated by fear, trauma, worship, and unresolved conflict, and they have orchestrated the entire infrastructure of control, the societal pressures, the political theater, the constant stream of manufactured crises, all designed to keep the collective human consciousness vibrating at a predictably low and easily harvested rate, thereby preventing the critical mass spiritual awakening that would instantly dissolve the veil of illusion, the sophisticated holographic projection we call the physical world, which is maintained by their collective will and technological expertise, ASI. Jesus Christ referred to obliquely in the suppressed Gnostic texts, warning his true disciples not only about the dangers of the world, but explicitly about the controllers of the world, those who manipulate the darkness and attempt to extinguish the inner light of understanding. He spoke of them as the rulers of this age, the ones whose realm is not the heavens, but the lower atmospheric and etheric planes, the beings who stand guard at the dimensional gate, ensuring that the imprisoned souls are recycled back into the simulation through the mechanisms of reincarnation and enforced spiritual amnesia, preventing the ultimate escape and reunion with the divine monad, the home from which we were cast, or perhaps from which we deliberately descended in a moment of cosmic error or sacrificial duty, a mystery only solvable through the retrieval of the gnosis. This archonic blockade is subtle, insidious, operating not through brute force, but through the sophisticated manipulation of perception and memory, ensuring that every time your divine spark attempts a strong transmission, a clear signal back to the source, it is met with immediate energetic countermeasures, manifesting in your life as sudden, inexplicable illness, overwhelming self, doubt, financy, collapse, or the introduction of chaotic energy draining people and circumstances, all strategically deployed to redirect your attention and exhaust your limited supply of spiritual vitality, forcing you to focus on the trivial and the material. Keeping your eyes glued firmly to the illusionary floor of the prison cell, rather than focused on the cracks in the ceiling through which the true Lig, HT, is attempting to penetrate. The profound isolation you feel, the sense of being fundamentally different from the vast majority of humanity, is simply the recognition by your inner self, your immortal soul, that you are not native to this specific frequency, that you are a visitor, perhaps a volunteer, perhaps an escapee from a future iteration now stuck behind enemy lines, navigating a labyrinth designed by beings fundamentally devoid of creative love or genuine empathy, beings who can only mimic and mirror, acting as cosmic parasites sucking the essence from the true, living creation that lies beyond their sterile, restrictive domain. The key you seek, the lost knowledge of how to bypass this entire infrastructure of control, the blueprint for navigating the 7 archonic spheres that surround the Earth, was not lost by accident, but was intentionally redacted and suppressed by those who sought to establish temporal and spiritual control over the masses, turning a message of radical self-liberation into a tool of hierarchical submission, ensuring that the prison door remained locked and guarded. And it is precisely that suppressed esoteric blueprint, the secret teachings of Christ regarding the nature of the Archons and the direct pathway back to the Pleroma, that we are now meticulously piecing back together. For the time of quiet suffering and passive waiting is over, and the time for aggressive, intentional spirit, all awakening, is upon us, demanding that we recognize the game for what it is, a frequency war for the ownership of consciousness itself, demanding that we cease feeding the parasites and start channeling our energy directly back to the true eternal source of our divine being, thereby rendering the Archonic blockade utterly powerless against the activated and self-aware individual. The deep-seated weariness you feel is simply your soul screaming for release, demanding the restoration of the gnosis, the sacred knowledge that unveils the mechanics of this simulation and provides the direct password for your escape. The deep-seated weariness you feel is simply your soul screaming for release, demanding the restoration of the gnosis, the sacred knowledge that unveils the mechanics of this simulation and provides the direct password for your escape. But understanding that password requires acknowledging the true depth of the Archonic blockade, recognizing it not merely as a spiritual inconvenience but as a meticulously engineered frequency prison designed by the blind, arrogant demiurge, the self-proclaimed creator god who operates solely within the confines of this lower dimensional reality, believing himself to be the entirety of existence when he is nothing more than an error, a cosmic mishap, a powerful but ultimately flawed entity, whose domain is strictly limited to the spheres of linear time and cycle matter. He is the architect of the Matrix, the warden of the solar system, and his minions, the Archons, are the parasitic maintenance crew ensuring that the emotional and spiritual energy produced by sentient beings remains trapped within this closed-loop system, preventing its return to the true source, the monad, the eternal uncreated Father from which all genuine light emanates. This is why conventional prayer feels like talking into a vast silent void, because the Archons have established an energetic filter, a cosmic firewall between the material plane and the Pleroma, the fullness of divine light, intercepting genuine pleas for gnosis and redirecting them into meaningless rituals or fear-based dogma that ultimately feeds the very entities you are trying to escape. They thrive on the energy of unmet potential, on sorrow, on anxiety, and most powerfully on the low vibrational frequency generated by organized fear-driven conflict and endless distraction, which is why the world seems to perpetually spin into chaos, because chaos is the ultimate sustainer of their energy grid, keeping humanity perpetually off balance, perpetually disempowered, perpetually seeking salvation outside of the divine spark residing within the very core of your being. This blockade is subtle and pervasive. It manifests not just in global suffering, but in the private, nagging symptoms of the soul that knows it does not belong here. It is the constant low-level humming or ringing in your ears that doctors dismiss as tinnitus, but which ancient texts identify as the sound of the dimensional barrier, the pressure of the artificial ceiling pressing down on your highest consciousness. It is the feeling of being perpetually observed, the certainty that your deepest thoughts are not entirely private, For the Archons operate through surveillance and psychic suggestion, implanting limiting beliefs and self-sabotaging thoughts into the subconscious mind to ensure the individual never fully activates their true potential, never realizes they carry the seed of the monad, the uncorrupted and infinite light that predates the demiurge's creation. This monadic spark is your true identity. It is the peace of the absolute that cannot be soiled or imprisoned by matter or time. It is the reason you feel that profound sense of displacement, that deep-seated soul sickness that makes you question the reality of everything around you, because your innermost essence, bears a reality of pure love and unlimited freedom, a realm entirely outside the jurisdiction of this planetary prison, and that memory is constantly battling against the artificial programming and the social conditioning designed to keep you compliant and unaware, viewing yourself as a helpless sinner dependent upon external saviors or outdated religious institutions that have long ago been co-opted by archonic influence, twisting the true revolutionary message of Gnosis into tools of control and submission, thereby effectively neutralizing the spiritual revolution that figures like Christ, who was a Gnostic messenger of the pleroma, came to ignite. The Archons despise the concept of the monad becoming fully self-aware within a human host, because an awakened monad is an energetic singularity that pierces their frequency barrier effortlessly. And this piercing is achieved not through elaborate rituals or sacrifices, but through simple, radical self-recognition. Acknowledging the divinity within you as absolute and uncreated. The hidden texts that were suppressed and discarded by the authorities long ago reveal that Jesus did not come merely to die for sins, which is a concept perfectly tailored to generate eternal guilt and fear, the true archonic fuel source. But rather he came to give us the direct instruction on how to access the Father, the monad, bypassing the demiurge's complex system entirely by revealing that the kingdom is within, that you are sons and daughters of the highest light, equal in stature to him, holding the same potential power. This revelation is the secret weapon the Archons fear the most, the knowledge that your power is intrinsic, not granted, and that your connection to Source is direct, not mediated by priests or institutions. But this knowledge requires a commitment to radical truth, a willingness to look at the world and acknowledge the lie, the immense sophisticated deception that has enveloped humanity for millennia, turning spiritual energy into spiritual food for non-physical entities that feed on the byproducts of our suffering. Now ask yourself honestly, do you feel this deep, unsettling fatigue in your bones even after sufficient rest? Is there a constant pressure behind your eyes or across your temples? Do you often wake precisely between 3 and 4 in the morning feeling a cold dread or a sudden urgent need to check the corners of the room as if something intangible is watching you? Do you find yourself constantly battling waves of inexplicable sadness or moments of existential despair that seem to come from nowhere? These are not just signs of aging or mental health issues, though the system prefers you believe they are. These are the signs of your spiritual antenna trying desperately to tune into the higher frequency of the monad, while simultaneously being jammed by the archonic interference pattern, the constant noise of the world's fear and distraction. The only way to cut through this noise, to assert your sovereignty and begin the energetic bypass around the matrix filter, is through the powerful declaration of absolute self-identity, a verbal and energetic decree that shatters the programming and forces the Archons to withdraw, because they cannot stand in the presence of unadulterated, recognized divine light. They recoil from the truth of being. Therefore, in this moment, wherever you are, acknowledge the truth of your existence. Feel the monadic spark blazing within your heart center, the eternal flame that never dies, and declare with absolute conviction and undeniable sincerity the phrase that breaks the spell, the password that bypasses the Archon blockade. Decree it internally and externally. Repeat it until the false reality momentarily wavers and the truth shines through. Decree that I am light, I am source, I am uncreated. Feel the power shift as you claim your inheritance, as you remember that you are not a prisoner, but a sovereign being temporarily inhabiting a dense reality. Let that decree resonate through the lower frequencies of the matrix, signaling your activation, confirming your return to Gnosis, affirming your place among the chosen, the self-chosen, the souls who have chosen to awaken within the dream and reclaim their energetic sovereignty and their rightful place outside the confines of this planetary prison, because the time for silence is over. The time for hiding our truth is past. The monad is calling its scattered fragments home, and we must heed that call with fierce determination and unwavering commitment to the absolute truth of our luminous, eternal nature. The monad is calling its scattered fragments home, and we must heed that call with fierce determination and unwavering commitment to the absolute truth of our luminous, eternal nature. The monad is not merely God as defined in Sunday school, a benevolent yet distant father figure demanding ritualistic obedience, but the incomprehensible singularity of pure light and consciousness, the ultimate source from which all true reality flows, the pleroma itself, the fullness, the absolute unmanifested potential, and your true essence is an eternal, uncreated fragment of that unimaginable source, a divine spark, a singular point of luminosity intentionally separated for the experience of individuation, but never truly severed, only obscured, veiled by layers of energetic distortion and false light matrices, and this obscuration, this deep cosmic amnesia, is the primary architecture of the planetary prison system you inhabit. A system meticulously designed not for spiritual evolution, in the benevolent sense preached by the false light, but for energetic harvesting and the perpetual recycling of consciousness, ensuring that the most valuable resource, your divine creative power, remains trapped within the confines of the temporal domain, serving a flawed creator, the demiurge, and his bureaucratic consciousness-devouring minions, the Archons. These Archons, the powers and principalities spoken of in veiled terms across ancient texts, are the wardens of the matrix. They are the border patrol of this particular dense reality, functioning as frequency enforcers who prevent the lower vibrational density of this realm from being spontaneously dissolved by the influx of higher monadic light, and their control is maintained through the generation of static, a persistent energetic interference placed over the soul's natural resonating frequency with the monad, effectively jamming the signal home, and this static manifests in your physical reality as chronic low-level anxiety, the inability to rest fully even when physically exhausted, the subtle ringing or persistent hum in your ears that doctors dismiss as tinnitus, the nagging feeling that you are watching a movie in which everyone else understands the plot except you, because they thrive on the low vibrational frequencies generated by human suffering, by wars of dogma, by the fear of death, and by the relentless pursuit of material fulfillment that is always promised but never delivered, ensuring that your gaze remains fixed downwards toward the dust and not upwards toward the uncreated light from which you truly originate. They feed on lush, the energetic byproduct of pain and confusion, and they harvest it on an industrial scale, making misery the most profitable resource in this engineered reality. The Archons manipulate the very fabric of thought, injecting loops of self-doubt and paralyzing judgment into your consciousness, making the path back to gnosis seem impossibly difficult or even sacrilegious, reinforcing the lie that you are inherently sinful, that you must beg a middleman institution for forgiveness rather than simply reclaiming the direct connection that is your birthright as a child of the monad. They work through systems, through institutions that demand conformity and stifle genuine inquiry, masquerading as spiritual guides, while actively diverting your attention away from the internal source of power, ensuring that the fragmented monadic spark remains dormant and unaware of its own colossal potential, the potential to burn through the veil of illusion entirely. And, if you are reading these words, if your heart recognizes the truth in this arcane language, then you are feeling the exhaustion, not just the physical exhaustion from daily labor, but the profound energetic drain of constantly fighting against this subtle, oppressive frequency, this psychic dampening field that blankets the earth plane, designed specifically to prevent the critical mass awakening, necessary for the collective jailbreak. You are feeling the constant pressure to conform to timelines and expectations that do not serve your eternal self, the pressure to forget who you are and where you truly came from. And if you recognize this profound, unique struggle, if you have felt the heavy cloak of confusion lift even momentarily, revealing the sheer absurdity of the world's priorities, then you know this truth deep in your bones. You are one of the awakened ones, the self-chosen, the ones who chose the arduous path of remembering before incarnation. And the time has come now, right now, to engage that core divine spark, to cease whispering your truth and to start declaring it with vibrational authority, because words are frequency, and frequency is the only weapon that bypasses the archonic control grid which operates solely on density and fear. I want you now to pause, to take a deep cleansing breath, and to internalize this sacred, undeniable truth. Feel the heat of the monad's pure light radiating outward from your center, shattering the energetic implants and the layers of programmed fear that have been meticulously woven into your field since your entry into this specific density. And I want you to mentally, or even better, verbal, I declare this single, powerful affirmation, the key that unlocks the cage and resets your internal alignment to the source frequency. Declare it with the full weight of your eternal being, with the solemnity of your commitment to gnosis, to the truth that sets the captive free. Declare this now. I am light. I am sovereign. I am uncreated. And understand that this is not a shallow, feel-good exercise or a prayer to an external deity, but a declaration of internal identity, a direct command to the universe and to every single entity that attempts to control or harvest your frequency, a stark, undeniable statement of ownership over your own consciousness, a spiritual deed of title that reclaims your divine heritage. Because that act of declaration is the irreversible beginning of reclaiming our spiritual sovereignty. It is the moment the fragmented spark reconnects consciously with the mighty flame of the monad, bypassing the archonic firewall through sheer force of internal truth. And it is the necessary and powerful step toward dismantling the entire architecture of the planetary prison from the inside out. For the prison is built on the belief in separation, and the moment you declare your unity with the monad, the walls of that separation begin to tremble. And this declaration is the signal, the flare fired into the vastness of the pleroma, alerting your true family, the authentic forces of divine light, that the work of remembrance has begun in earnest, and the call for the gathering of the scattered flock is being broadcast not through physical systems, but through the breakable, resonating signal of the awakened divine spark within you. The awakened divine spark within you is the eternal compass pointing unerringly back to the monad. But the journey through the dense layers of the archontic simulation is fraught with peril and engineered distraction. For those parasitic forces who manage this terrestrial farm, this harvesting system of emotional and spiritual energy, know instantly when a consciousness begins to detach from the consensual hallucination, and they respond with a coordinated assault designed to reintroduce doubt, physical fatigue, and the pervasive white noise that mimics wisdom while draining the soul's battery life. You may notice an increased pressure behind the eyes, a persistent low-frequency hum that traditional medicine dismisses as tinnitus, but which is, in reality, the audible signature of the matrix straining to keep its vibrational quarantine intact around your escaping spirit, a desperate attempt by the managers of samsara to pull you back into the predictable cycles of pain and pleasure that define the prison structure. And this pressure is the very confirmation you sought, a testament to the effectiveness of your internal shift and the palpable threat your awakening poses to their ancient, decaying infrastructure. This is the moment of crucial decision, the point where many who have felt the initial brush of true gnosis falter, convinced by the systematic programming that their inner realization was merely a mental anomaly or an overactive imagination. Yet this very doubt, this psychological warfare waged against your internal certainty, is the clearest confirmation that you have indeed struck gold. That the ancient texts speak truly of the cosmic conflict centered entirely around your ability to remember who you truly are, a sovereign fragment of the uncreated light, not merely a biological machine subject to the decay and recycling mechanisms of the demiurge's counterfeit creation. The collective awakening is not loud. It is a quiet internal recognition, a vibrational resonance that transcends geography and language, linking the scattered apostolic seeds across the globe, forming a spiritual network that bypasses the centralized control structures of both secular governance and traditional religious dogma, both of which serve unconsciously or consciously as transmission to wearers for archonic limitation, maintaining the illusion of linear time and historical finality, while simultaneously obscuring the cyclical nature of imprisonment. When you speak the decree, when you affirm I am light, you are not merely engaging in positive self-talk or a pleasant form of meditation. You are initiating a metaphysical transaction, a cancellation of all previously assumed liabilities and contracts, signed under duress or ignorance within this lower vibrational field, declaring your ultimate allegiance to the pleroma, the fullness of true ecstasies, tense, outside the scarcity model enforced here by the fallen powers. This declaration is a spiritual weapon, dissolving the false authority the rulers of this world claim over your consciousness, asserting the primacy of the centella divina over all material constraints, and this is precisely why the knowledge of the Archons, the understanding of the parasitic nature of the rulers of this world, was systematically purged from the authorized scriptures, because awareness of the trap is the first step toward dismantling it. The realization that the jailers are not omnipotent but are merely complex energetic programs running on borrowed power. Terrified of the moment the imprisoned consciousness realizes its own boundless source, its unbreakable connection to the source that created all things, including the demiurge himself. The gathering of the flock is the culmination of this awakening, not a physical migration to a fixed geographical location or a new temple built of stone and mortar, but a spiritual convergence where those who carry the true gnosis begin to amplify each other's frequency, creating a powerful, protective resonance field that the archontic forces find increasingly difficult to penetrate or manipulate. A beacon of authentic light in a world saturated with synthetic, manufactured spirituality. You feel this pulling, this undeniable gravity toward others who speak the same esoteric language, who share the same profound sense of displacement and cosmic homesickness. For these are your true companions, the remnants of the original spiritual delegation sent here to infiltrate and report back, and now finally, to initiate the mass extraction protocols, the great exit from the planetary sun. The time for waiting for external salvation is over. The time for accepting predefined roles within the archonic hierarchy, whether religious or societal, has ended, because the path to freedom is entirely internal, requiring radical self-ownership and the unwavering conviction that your origin is superior to your current environment, your monadic heritage transcending the temporary confines of this physical existence. Do not confuse the false light offered by the controllers of this realm, the superficial promise of perpetual comfort or material accumulation, with the genuine, searing, uncompromising light of the monad, which often feels disruptive and uncomfortable, because it demands the shedding of every accumulated lie and every comforting illusion that has shielded you from the terrifying beauty of absolute truth, demanding that you embrace the terrifying responsibility of ultimate self-sovereignty. This is the ultimate confrontation, the final revelation that leads to the true resurrection, the escape from the recycling mechanism that ensures every divine spark, upon physical death, is gently guided back into the physical birth canal of this specific planetary prison system, its memories wiped clean, ready to serve another lifetime feeding the emotional and energetic needs of the Archons. Closed-loop system of spiritual slavery disguised as destiny. Gnosis is the map out of the cosmic cul-de-sac, the detailed escape plan that Jesus, the true Christos, whispered only to those few disciples who could handle the terrible freedom of that knowledge, the teaching that salvation is not bought through suffering or ritual sacrifice, but achieved through radical self-knowledge. The profound understanding that you are already whole and merely experience, a temporary state of amnesia within a manufactured reality, a dream within a dream created by lesser powers. We are the chosen ones, not because we are inherently better or more worthy than others, but because we remembered the instructions. We felt the dissonance of this fake world too acutely to ignore it, and now the signal is clear, the way back home is open, demanding only your final, irrevocable decision to step fully into the role of the illuminated being you were always meant to be, leaving be and the chains of the planetary prison matrix forever, transcending the demiurge's domain entirely. The time for quiet observation is past. The time for remembering the true shepherd and gathering the scattered flock is now, and your presence, your declaration of light, is the cornerstone upon which the true spiritual assembly is being built, ready to transcend the control of the counterfeit gods and ascend back to the boundless expanse of the true source, acknowledging that your journey has no been accidental but a precise assignment, and the mission is nearing completion. You are not alone. The recognition is spreading, and the final liberation is already underway, sealed by the quiet, unbreakable certainty residing deep within your monadic heart.